Okay, I have 7 o'clock. I know this is a busy day for all of us, um, with it being election day, no politicking at this end, um, but we're going to get started. This is Ron Freeman. I'm the venue director for snowshoeing. I've been venue director, I think this is my 4th year. This will be my first year as venue director as a member of Special Olympics Maryland staff. I joined Special Olympics Maryland as Baltimore Region Director on October 1st, so I'm looking forward to another good year of snowshoe. Okay, let's get started. Here's our agenda this evening. We're going to swing through most of these issues. Many of them you've seen before and are exactly the same as previous years. Some things have been modified, and we'll touch a little stronger on those things as we go through. Some of the administrative forms and items of that nature we've moved to the end of a webinar, and since we've been doing them for the last year or so with all those forms, we will not be touching those very strongly today, but they are here, and the most recent forms are here in the presentation that you can use as a reference. Again, I'm Ron Freeman, venue director. We also have on the line who will be speaking through a couple of these slides is Steve Bennett, and I believe Mike Zarnowski may join us. He is on the road driving back from the Lower Shore, and perhaps Nick Anderson from Special Olympics Maryland may also be on the call. I'm not sure. Okay. Having been through the welcome and introductions, let's move on. And I'm going to turn this over to Steve, who has been out to ski whitetail this fall and can talk to some of the changes that in our environment, a couple of new buildings. So, Steve?
Yes, thank you, Ron. As you all can see on the pictures here, the top picture to your left, you can see the siding going on in the new construction. The building, everything to the left there is brand new. And again, Katrina from the resort has been working with, talking about the new construction. They're hoping to have that completed around November 15th. And once that's completed, we're going to go back out as a staff and the games management team members to take a look at it and see if how we can utilize the new space. The bottom right picture is how it's facing up the mountainside. So that's the backside of the resort. Again, fantastic construction. It looks like they've almost doubled in size. And there's going to be really no changes to the outside where you see the black fencing, where we do some of our staging and awards and stuff like that. That will all primarily remain the same. But again, once the construction's complete, we will go back up and do one more site visit to take a look at everything. But facilities fantastic, and they've been really great to work with as always. So again, just wanted to show you some of the new construction. You can also check out some updates on their website as well.
Okay. Steve, I'll let you continue.
Yeah, one of the things we're looking at right now is we have contacted a couple new hotels that we're looking at for potential housing for delegations and some of our key management personnel. Once we get those contracts finalized, we will release that information, but they will be a little closer than what we've stayed at in the past from what I've been told. The locations we're looking at will be in Hagerstown, and they'll be about a 10 to 15 minutes closer to where everyone has been housed in the past. Once we get those details finalized, we will pass that out to head delegates and coaches and things of that nature. The one thing I will stress at this time, and will continue to stress it, is once that information is released and you're notified of the new housing locations, please, please, please do not have anyone call these hotels directly, as we are blocking off the entire hotels, and we don't want to have any confusion with individuals calling and asking for room blocks saying there were Special Olympics. So we will block the rooms. We will hold all the rooms. We will make those reservations, and then we'll talk to the area directors to let them know on their housing locations. So hopefully it will be a good change for everyone, and details to follow.
Okay, we have a question from Karen Broadwater. Is that right, Karen?
Yeah, I'm just joining the webinar.
Oh, okay. Thanks. Thought you had a question. Sorry.
And again, I'll just continue along here. This is the overall layout as it has been in the past. And again, once the construction is finalized and we get a chance to go out there, we will update any of the information or any of the locations and let you guys know where things may be relocated, if any. It just depends on how we feel things will work best for us and you guys. So details to follow.
Okay. Thanks, Steve. Okay, here are the registration deadlines for this year's Winter Games. You'll see, I'm not going to read through everything. You'll see the training registration, the last date for missing forms, and competition registration deadline. Just be aware, as we remind you on every season, these dates are when all this entry information and forms must be completed into GMS by your local area or county or GMS manager. So if their deadline to get them into our system maybe a few days earlier than that, just keep aware that these are our deadlines, and your deadline for your area manager, your GMS manager, may be could be a week or so before this.
And I think one addition to that is one change as we move into the new year is it used to be the head coaches needed to be certified, and at this point, as we move forward, every coach needs to be certified and have the protective behaviors, the concussion, and all the other relative background checks, etc. So again, we'll hit on that on another slide or two as well, but I want to emphasize that point, that it's not just head coaches, it's every coach, partner, volunteer.
Right, and we'll see a slide further along to emphasize that, as Steve said. Well, here it is. So these are the coaching requirements for completion of the Class A volunteer and background screening, the protective behavior screening, and the online concussion training. We need all of these completed. In addition, a completion of the coach sport certification. Once you've taken these courses, these are all valid for 3 years. A note, as we mentioned at the bottom, I know you can read, but I'm going to emphasize this again. Unified partners and all other volunteers must complete and maintain their volunteer screening and protective behavior screening in order to volunteer with Special Olympics. Coach certification. Again, as Steve said, this is for all coaches, not just head coaches. They must complete one general or one sport-specific learning opportunity to renew. If you've got no previous Special Olympics sports certification in your specific sport, you must complete coaching Special Olympics athletes or principles of coaching. And this will apply, again, as I said, to all coaches, not just head coaches. And we will provide those links and how to get to these things later on a later slide, and we'll also be sending that out. Oops, went the wrong way, sorry. Okay, and again, we emphasize this almost in every webinar that I've seen. All coaches for Winter Games sports must have sports certification valid through the Winter Games by January 23rd, 2017. And again, that certification is good for 3 years. Update will be sent this week or the beginning of next week with those learning opportunities when we will be providing in-person sessions, live webinars, and we'll provide you those links for the online courses. those online courses, Special Olympics Maryland does provide a subsidy.
I have a question. Do you keep records of what coaches are in need of the training or who are fit the requirements for the coaches training?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Steve or anybody else on the call from staff. All of that is in GMS.
Okay,
yeah, that is correct, Ron. And we will also be sending out some information with exactly what you're asking for, updates on coaches' standings and what is coming up to be renewed or has not been completed. So we will be sending that information out very soon.
Okay, so each coach will know what they need to do,
Exactly,
or if they've already complied. Okay,
yes.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to some of the more competition-related slides. Excuse me. No new events this year. These are the same events as we've had in years past. You'll see when we get to the 2016 rule changes, there's the 4x2 relay and the 4x2 United relay are now official Special Olympics sports. We've had them here in Maryland for the last 3 years, I believe, and now they've been passed as official sports, and we'll see that a little bit later. As you'll note on the asterisk races, the shorter races, 25-meter and 50-meter, they're considered for, those races are considered events for athletes who are not yet able to compete in other events. So if your athlete is only doing the 25s and the 50s, they will not be eligible for relays, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. Okay, same as the last few years. Snowshoeing athletes may compete in up to 3 individual events plus 2 relays. As we've done in the past, we will be doing the 4x200s on Monday and the 4x1 and the 4x4s on Tuesday. So your athlete can do 3 individual events plus either the 4x2 plus the 4x2 on Monday and either the relays on Tuesday. There's special notes for the athletes in the shorter races. Athletes in 25-meter may also enter the 50. Athletes in the 50 can only enter the 25-meter race or the 100-meter race. If they do enter the 100-meter race, then they are eligible to run a 4x100 relay, but only if they're entered in the 100. Coaches, you just need to be mindful of your athletes, ability to run multiple events in the same day. Usually we, if we get through the schedule like we have in the last 3 or 4 years, there may not be a whole lot of rest time between some events, so just be mindful of that. We'll send out that schedule and the days that those events will be run in mid-January once we get an idea of what people are going to be entering. Okay, as we said, relays open to athletes who are running at least 100 meters. And in order to participate in the relay, they must be training with the other members of their relay team. We've done this race in the past few years, the 800-meter unified race. We spell it out, the criteria and the rules for it underneath. The idea for this, and we've done this, I think we did it in cross-country this year, I'm not sure. The idea is if you have an athlete who, by physical ability, is able to run 800 meters, but perhaps mentally is not confident enough, this gives that athlete a partner to run with in a special 800-meter unified race, and perhaps in the following year they'd be signing up for the 800 meters on their own. So there are the rules for that. Keep moving.
Ron,
yes.
Question.
Yes, John.
It says that the pairs may not touch. I thought they could hold hands, just not pull. That's what they can do in the long-distance running. I thought it was the same here for the snowshoeing.
Actually, John, I think you're right. I think the slide is wrong. As long as there's no advantage given by pulling, carrying action, and I will make a note and modify this slide. You are correct. Thank you, John.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, moving on. Key points for 2017, and there's other slides that mention this as well. The time trials will be Sunday, February the 12th, and generally we go from 10 to 2. All athletes and partners, in order to participate in Winter Games, need to participate in time trials. No difference than from previous years. If you don't compete in time trials, you may not compete in the Winter Games. A couple of bullets about the Monday of Winter Games. Opening ceremonies, I believe, is still scheduled for around 11 a.m., followed by competition in the afternoon. Tuesday, competition in the morning. Will usually wrap up by noon. Again, 3 individual events plus 1 relay each day. And our layout, as you'll see in a slide in a little bit, will be the same as it's been last few years. We will be presenting awards at the tent just on the other side of the bus loop from the snowshoeing area. And we'll be doing it at the conclusion of each race. The layout, no change. We were, I think, pretty successful last few years in garnering some extra space within the lodge, so that staging, as best we can, is not too crowded. We're going to try to get those same 3 bays that we have in the past. But there's a picture of the basic layout, and it's no different than it has been the last 3 or 4 years. Okay, rule changes for 2016 rule changes, and they will apply to our Winter Games for 2017. The first bullet item about old formatting, if you actually look at the rules, everything was identified by letters and subsets of letters. New formatting just has all numerical systems, so that's the first bullet item. The second I mentioned earlier, the 4x2 relay and the 4x2 unified relay are now official Special Olympics events. The next bullet item about equipment, there's no real change, well, there's no substantial change. For the most part, the wording has been clarified. There's no difference in the size of the shoe or the frame itself, but hopefully you can see we have a fewer lines in the description, and I think it's a little bit easier to read, but there is no change in the size or the requirements of the shoes themselves. This rule clarification, or this new rule for the start, is just allowing the ability to have what you see on the left-hand side is the start command, which we've been using is racers go, and they sort of combine that with what you'll see on the next slide is if we're using a gun, it's either racers go or the firing of a starting pistol. We have no plans to go with a starting pistol, especially not knowing the weather and how cold it might be. We will be continuing with the same starts that we've been doing. The last bullet, we've been doing this as well for a start indicator being a flag for the visually impaired athletes. A flag for the hearing impaired athletes and a tap touch for the visually impaired athletes. Last is a little bit of clarification for guide runners. There was no old rule, but this is, I think we've been following this for as long as I've been out at snowshoes, so there's no real change for us, but it's a little clarification to the Special Olympics International rules for the use of guide runners. I'm not going to go through these. These are the same slides we've had in the past. These are the shoe sizes and the description of the kinds of things that you can do with your running shoes, with your snowshoes. Poles are optional as they've been. We do have some athletes who run with poles, and that's fine. We're going to go into the next few slides will be some of the rules highlights. We have not changed any of our rules. We will have a mass start for races that are longer than 100 meters. We will have lanes, as we had in the past, for 25, 50, and 100 meters. Again, there's the two-command start. We will not be using a pistol to start. We have used a slight waterfall start when the race involves a curve or a turn, but if you've been out to the snowshoe before, if you're not a new coach, you sort of know that the course sort of goes to the left a little bit, then goes to the right a little bit, so the waterfall start is pretty minimal. Two false starts is a DQ. It's when an athlete significantly moves any part of the body. We're going to have our crack management team back at the snowshoe area, and we've had the same folks at the start line and with the starter's gun and at the finish line for at least the last 4 years, and we will accommodate our athletes, but we will still be following the DQ rules. A thing I'm going to emphasize this year that we've maybe been a little lax on is who's out there on the course. We're going to try to marshal that a little bit better this year. So only officials and athletes are on the course. We will mark where the spectators area is and try to keep the course a little tighter for our athletes so they can run a better race. So we in the past, at least last year, I think we had some of our folks a little bit too close to the sidelines. We're going to look at that and see if we can mark that a little bit better. The 2-minute rule, no change. Must progress at least 20 meters every 2 minutes in any race longer than 100 meters. If an athlete falls, that athlete has 2 minutes to correct. And an athlete may not progress more than 3 meters without both snowshoes on their feet and must cross the finish line with both snowshoes on his or her feet. We expect it to rain. We expect them to grade the snowshoe area very similarly to the way it's been done in the past. So the 25 and the 50 will be straight the entire course. The 100 will have a slight angle as we sort of follow the snow line, slight angle to the right. The 100-meter is pretty much 100% flat. There may be, actually I don't even believe it is, a slight uphill at the finish. The 200-meter has a significant, the 200-meter is around the 100-meter mark, so 200-meter will be flat as well. It's when we get into the longer races, the 400-meter, which is an out and back around the cone. There is a significant hill going uphill going out and downhill coming back. So hopefully and we'll talk about the coaches on snow and certainly the athletes on snow, that we'll try to get some ability to train on some of those hills. I know it's a little tough sometimes to get our athletes out on snow, because we're all sort of dependent on the weather. But but that's the expected terrain. 800 meters, twice around the 400-meter course. The 1600-meter, we will go out to the turnaround up the hill. If we have athletes, actually I don't believe we did last year or the last 2 years for the 1600. But hopefully we'll have some athletes who are ready for the fun of running practically a mile in snowshoes uphill. If we do, we will mark a course up the hill beyond the 400-meter mark. Rules for the finish. Snowshoer has to cross the finish line. It's when the snowshoer's torso crosses, not the tips of his shoes, or his hands or anything that's extended beyond the shoes. And as I said before, the athlete must be wearing both snowshoes on their feet when crossing the finish line for it to be a valid finish. Not going to go too much into relays. We've not changed them. For the 4x100, we will have fly zones. If we think, well, we'll put them out there. I don't think on snowshoe we've had anyone using a fly zone for the last 4 or 5 years that I've been out there, but we'll mark them out there. There is no fly zone for the 4x4 or the 4x2. And when we get out there for either coaches on snow or athletes on snow, we can describe the relays. They will be the same kind of format that we've done in the past. We're going to mark it so that no exchange is on a turn. So that's why we sort of have going around the front, or going around the, starting at the 50 and going backwards and in different directions, so that we don't have any exchanges on a turn. Exchange zone is 20 meters. We'll try to have that marked for you both on coaches on snow and certainly at athletes on snow weekend for any practicing that you'd like to do for relays. As we do a track, the officials and the marshals will show your athletes the front of the exchange zone, the back of the exchange zone, and we will position them at the middle of the exchange zone. If you want to coach them differently, your athlete is free to move to the front, to the back, however you coach them, and we'll emphasize to the marshals, that's absolutely fine, but we will show them, we'll put them in the middle, and it's up to you if you want to coach them differently. They can move after it's been explained to them. 4 competitors in a relay. Any team with fewer than 4 competitors must forfeit. Everybody does 1/4 of the distance of the total relay. With the given that if some athlete is at the beginning of the exchange and the next athlete is at the end, that may vary just a little bit. But no competitor is allowed to compete in more than one leg of any relay. If it's a unified relay, you can. It's 2 partners, 2 Special Olympics athletes, and you can order them any way you choose. Okay, this is the adaptations for the 4x1, the 4x2, and the 4x4. So as you're, especially in the 4x1, if you want to get your athletes who are having more difficulty with hills, either uphill or downhill, you might want to keep track of that so you get your athletes in the right order. And we can talk about that as we get closer to competition. For protests, only the head coach from the delegation may file protests. I can't remember. I think we have maybe just a few protests last year. No race will finish on a curve. We'll have the unified or the set finish line for not set start line, but our finish lines will not be finishing on the curve. So no difference in previous years. The exception being if the conditions of the snow, and I can't imagine what they might be, but if there are, we may have to adapt things on the fly based on what whitetail can or can't do, or what's available to us out at the venue. But expect it to be exactly the same as we've had, at least for every year that we've been out there at whitetail. The last bullet on this slide, coaches and spectators and family members, and we need sometimes to emphasize this to our volunteers, may not pace the athletes. Not only at Winter Games, we need to emphasize this at time trials as well. I think it was a bigger problem at time trials than it was at the games themselves. But we're going to be, have folks keeping an eye out for that. Here are the rules for DQs, for disqualifications. The one point that comes up not only at Snowshoe, comes up at track as well. For those races that are run in lanes, the 25, the 50, and the 100, it is not necessarily a disqualification if your athlete leaves his or her lane, unless they impede with another athlete. So that's what we're going to be looking at specifically for a DQ, not just because they left their lane. If they are significantly behind or something else where they're not impeding another athlete, that is not a DQ. Okay, I'm not going to read through every DQ rule. Time trials, Sunday, February 12th. This is a tentative schedule. It's the same tentative schedule we've had in the past. Registration check-in at 8. At 10 o'clock, we will do a single time trial for a 400-meter race, and the 400-meter race will be the time trial event for all 6 of those listed events, the 400, the 800, 1600, to the extent we have any athletes doing the 1600, 5K, 10K, or 4x4, the 400-meter race will be the qualifying event. At 11 o'clock or so, we'll do a single time trial of the 50-meter, which will be the qualifying event for the 25 and the 50. And the last event we'll run at time trials will be the 100-meter, and that will qualify your athletes for 100, the 200, and the 4x100 time trial. Last 2 points, you are free to warm up in practice areas and open spaces when you are not participating in time trials. And as we say for winter games, if we're out there marking the course and marking the lanes on Sunday morning, we ask that you not interfere with that. But if there's a free area, feel free to practice. And as we did last year, and I believe the year before, we'll mark some things, some lanes, and certainly some exchange zones on Saturday for your athletes to practice if you come up on Saturday. Okay, some key dates. We mentioned earlier Coaches on Snow. We're going to try to emphasize that a little bit more this year and get a little bit more formalized in the kind of training and the kind of experience that we give to both our coaches and our athletes. So we're going to open that up. We did this a couple years ago and didn't have as much as many folks as we would have liked, but we're going to open this up on the Coaches on Snow training on January 7th. If you would like to bring 3 or 4 athletes to help demo the techniques that we're going to go through, let us know. Send me an email or Nick Anderson an email. We're going to try to cut off at around 15 athletes or so. That's not a hard number, but that's what we feel would be a workable number to demonstrate some of the techniques, stops and starts and exchanges and things. So that will be at Ski Whitetail. We're, as we mentioned there, we're open to suggestions and requests for how that day can go. So feel free to shoot me an email. I believe the last slide has my email address. So we're going to try to make that a better experience than it has been in the past. So Athlete on Snow training, Athlete on Snow training and time trials, again, February 11th and 12th. The time trials, again, mandatory for participation in winter games on the 12th. Feel free to come out on the 11th. We'll be out there in the morning, probably open up by 8, 9 o'clock or so, and we'll try to provide some lane lines and some assistance and timing and things for your athletes, and we'll be out there till the last team is ready to go in. Same key dates that we've emphasized earlier. Nothing has changed on those. Athlete on snow, winter game, time trials. Our Snowshoe Coaches webinar pre-season or pre-competition webinar is, I'm not sure if that date's right, February 9th. I may have to, we'll get back to you on that. I don't think that date is right. I believe it's the 16th. Okay, we are, for the registration process, I know that you know, this is, you'll all need to work with your area's GMS person for specific dates, and we mentioned this earlier, by which he or she needs to receive your information. The dates that we have given are the ones that we need to have it into GMS, so your GMS person will probably require it a few days to a week or so earlier than those dates. Okay, we've mentioned the first bullet. They must participate in the Sunday of Athlete on Snow training. That's not really training; it's the time trials. In order to participate, you can, based on those, you can do event changes following the time trials, and the submission of those changes. We would expect during the first few days after the time trials have been completed. Paperwork requirements: all athletes must have a valid and up-to-date medical prior to starting training, and they must be valid through winter games. Very important. No exceptions here. Unified partners, head coaches, assistant coaches must meet the following requirement prior to their starting involvement with a training program: valid and up-to-date application on file, and that needs to be valid through winter games. Completed protective behaviors, pass the background check. Chaperones and head of delegations must have met the above 3 criteria prior to being registered for winter games. And the last one in red: all participants must have read, signed, and submitted new waivers for housing and concussion by the training registration deadline. It's the new page 3, and we have a picture of it in one of the following slides of the medical and volunteer applications. And just going to open up to Steve in case I've misstated or missed any points in terms of the registration process.
I think fine, Ron.
Okay, great. Here's some of the links for resources. We will get this webinar that we are recording up on, I missed, under the YouTube. It's not the training videos from the IUS Strength and Conditioning Program. Of course, I'm sure that's a wonderful one to pay attention to, but we're also going to get the snowshoeing one up as well. But if you would like to be informed about strength and condition, I highly recommend that webinar as well. Okay, if you have any questions, need more information, here are the email addresses and areas of responsibility for Nick Anderson, Eastern Maryland Regional Sports Director. For Central Maryland, it's Natalia Steffen. For Western Maryland, it's Melissa Anger. And for Baltimore region, it's myself. And we have email addresses there. Feel free to shoot us an email for any questions or things that you need. This is a slide we put in for every pre-competition. These are the kinds of things that are valid for approved course or development experience. I'm not going to read through each one of these, and we'll provide guidelines on how you can sign up for these things. Continuation of an approved course of development experience. Coaching Special Athletes course. You can either take it online, or I believe it will be offered live, Principles of Coaching the same way. And the others that are listed there. And if you have, and I sort of experienced this in the past when folks either on this call or other calls similar to this have experience with another course, another vendor. Oftentimes, those things can be approved, or we're open for those ideas as well. Okay, the following slides are, or when we get to them, show the, we have in these slides the medical forms, the volunteer forms, and we have them in this slide deck for you to be aware of. You need to coordinate with your area director to make sure that all things are are using the proper form and all the deadlines are met. But as this slide emphasizes, no athlete or volunteer may participate in any Special Olympic program without a valid and current medical form or volunteer applications. Absolutely no exceptions to this policy. As I mentioned, work with your area leadership to get these things filled out in advance of the training session. So all these things are in the system, and your athletes are ready to go as soon as we're ready to start training for Winter Games. No difference here on the medicals. You'll see in a slide or two the new medical form. I believe it's a 4-page form, which and somebody correct me. I think the 4th page is help me, Steve. The 4th page of that form and the 5th page are just. We'll get to them.
I think those are, yeah.
Okay. I apologize for stumbling over that. As I'm learning more and more about the processes here at Special Olympics, I'm finding out how little I do know, so bear with me. Okay. I'm not going to go through each one of these. These are here as display for your, so you're familiar with the form. These are the new forms as of last Friday, I believe, November the 3rd. I don't know if, Steve, you would like to talk through these, or just emphasize that it's for our coaches. You need to work with your area leadership so that all of our coaches, volunteers, athletes, and partners have valid forms on file.
Yeah, absolutely. Just with your area directors and make sure, double check before you have any training sessions or whatever that they have valid medicals, etc. And as head coaches, obviously, you want to be aware of any situations or medical sensitivities that the athletes have, whether it's their routine of taking medications or other physical limitations they may have. Just be aware of those for sure.
Thanks. That was the medical. Okay, volunteers, and we'll show an example of the volunteer form as well. To be considered valid, the volunteer application must be complete and must include all 3 pages, all necessary information, and have all required signatures. If the volunteer is a minor, he or she must also complete the volunteer minor reference form and obtain signed references from 2 people with whom they are not related. An example of the newest volunteer application form, it's a 2-page form. Here's the student minor reference form. That is an issue for any Special Olympics competition. All coaches need to be familiar and have and have available not only at the competition but at every available training session the first report of accident or incident. Need to complete this immediately following an injury to any program participant or spectator or any property damage to the facility. Okay. If should an incident occur, I'm not going to read through it. We need to get these things, take care of our athletes first, or whoever's injured first, and then complete the form, and get a copy to your area director and the who's listed at the bottom of the form. And there's a copy of that. And that is the last slide of the presentation. We finished at least the slide presentation a few minutes early. Open it up to any questions for either myself or Steve or anything you'd like to share with the group.
Will you send us, this is Jackie Smeller from Frederick County, will you send us a copy of the slides?
Absolutely.
By email?
Absolutely. Everybody on this call, everybody who's signed up for the coaches webinar will receive a copy of this slide deck. We will post this, the recording of the webinar as well for anyone who was not able to join us this evening. Thank you for reminding me. I meant to say that, but yes, we will.
I have another question as well. Regarding the new housing, if since it's all going to be handled by Special Olympics, will there be an allowance for if other parents want to book some rooms as well?
That's you. Is that you, Jackie?
Yes.
Yeah. Once again, once we get all the contractual bookings and everything and see what our room situations are, we will look at which one of those hotels we will allow or determine the family housing hotel or whatever. We'll work with Susan and you guys as well to put that information out.
Okay. It doesn't so much apply to me, but I thought other people might be asking.
Yeah, and I think the primary thing, like you all well know, is we're going to dedicate and block all the rooms for our delegations and key leadership, and then we'll designate when and where families can call into their hotel to start making their reservations.
Okay.
Great. Any other questions?
Hey, Ron.
Yes.
This is Don Buick. I have a couple questions on the dates because I'm not on the webinar.
Yes.
I can't. My computer was acting funky. When is the training deadline? To have everyone entered in GMS for training?
Let me hold on. Go back to the slide. Hold on a second.
This is like the third slide or something.
Yep.
I thought it was January 12th.
January 12th.
January 12th, and any outstanding forms is
January 23rd.
January 23rd, and the winter game dates are
the dates of the competition.
Yeah, for the I got the dates of the training, but what's the dates of the winter games?
Oh my gosh.
They're the 27th and 28th.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Great.
Otherwise, I might have forgotten to go out there.
Yeah.
I know. I want to get these out early.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And Don, just to make sure you also had the time trials the weekend of the 11th and 12th of February.
Yep. Yeah, I got those. Yep, got those. Thank you.
You bet, Don.
Thanks, Don. Any other questions? Okay. Looks like we can give everyone 11 minutes of their election coverage back to them this evening. Thank you all for taking time for participating in this webinar. And again, we will send out the slide deck, and this recording will be up on MyOSOMD and available for folks who were not able to participate. So thank you, everyone, and Have a great evening. Thanks.
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 Bye.
You too.
Thank you.